Guys, hello. I'm so humbled to be here this afternoon. We're going to go on a bit of a cosmic journey, as my dad just said to me after I described the speech. So I'm going to talk about two of my favourite passions, surfing and designing futures, and a technique that we use called contextual mapping to understand what ideas that we should be pursuing. Now, the purpose of this is for us to understand or grasp future scenarios so we can make better decisions in the current day, and also be able to see emerging ideas as they come to light. I'm going to use the analogy of weather patterns to describe this a little bit, as they follow a very similar sort of rules from like microclimates and really sort of localized systems through to global influences. So without further ado, we should go surfing. Who surfs here? Show of hands. Okay, by the end, in 10 minutes' time, hopefully all of you are. So imagine we're at TEDxNoosa. The sun's out, the swell's rolling around the headlands. I would take off my shirt, but I think it's against the TED rules. And I'm on my board, there's 30 other guys out, and we're all vying for that perfect wave. The waves are rolling around the headland, and you're sort of judging, oh, he's going over there, I'll sort of come over here. And everybody's looking for that sort of, to intercept it at the perfect spot to take off and get a great ride. Now imagine the waves are like ideas. They just keep on coming. And it's us interpreting when the timing is perfect to catch that wave, which is what we're actually doing. Now, that riding that wave is like sort of grasping an idea and making it happen. Now, sometimes you might get to the wave too late and it's already formed or broken or someone else has caught it. Or we might get to the wave too early, exert a whole heap of energy, and ultimately, even though it was a good idea, we didn't quite get it. Now, unlike going surfing, me being able to look on my phone and get a weather report, ideas, where do these ideas come from? Where is the forecast of ideas? Now, to do this, we have to take a wider angle sort of approach and get a little bit more perspective to our surfing location and be able to identify other locations around to better understand where the waves are coming from and the influences and the systems that are behind generating these ideas that we're catching. Now, when I'm in the water, my context is as far as my eyes can see in the horizon. When we're able to take a wider view, we can start to see these different, understand the influences and be able to see further into the future. Now, these spots could be anything from like geographical locations that are emitting a certain energy through to certain trends through to sectors. And what we're doing here is we're starting to see these influences and how they're intersecting with the how the swell's intersecting with the beaches and forming the waves and forming the ideas. So I can sort of see that there's a great idea over in that sector, and that gives me some inspiration to be able to maybe pull it or understand that it's eventually going to come to the location that I'm surfing at. So I've hence just got a little bit more of an idea, or I've seen further into the future. Now, we keep on zooming out, and as we zoom out, we start to look at, try to understand more of what those influences are. It's less about the execution and me riding the wave, but more about understanding the influences behind these systems. Now, this is the technique that we call contextual mapping. Understanding what influences are at play when we're engaging in trying to explore a future idea or trend. It's these intersections that are of great interest to us, where we can sort of see multiple influences and try to start to think, okay, at that crossover, there's going to be some energy, or there's a potential opportunity there. Zooming out again, we start to get more of a global sort of understanding. So we're now right away from the execution of the idea, but we're looking at and trying to determine what are those global influences that might impact our potential area. Now, these could be like political or environmental or major technological shifts. Now, the thing is, when we're looking at this is sort of half the puzzle, because we're looking at influences that are already at play in the current day. Or, if you're into the weather, it's sort of like looking at a 7-day forecast. And the idea of, the sort of concept here is that the ideas are coming in the future, and it's more of our ability to interpret those ideas and go further into the future to interpret those ideas. Like this, this is a great example of an interpretation of an idea, getting a surfing spot with no one else out so I can catch the perfect wave. Okay, now we're going right out. So we have a relative understanding of what the influences are. But to go deeper into future, we need to understand what are the motivations behind those influences. We use a technique called ultimate futures to try to start to understand what these influences might look like. So I'll run you through a bit of a scenario. We do a lot of work in the music consumption area, and so an example of this would be, okay, how far out can we go into the future to imagine the ultimate music consumption experience? Now, for me, it would be something along the lines of waking up in the morning and just thinking or feeling that I need some music and it's starting to play on my home stereo. I would then go and get ready for work and get into the car, and that music would follow me. It would be the ultimate background soundtrack to my life. Now, obviously, I'm not wired into some sort of system, and there's nothing that can actually read my emotions and sense my location at the moment. But these start to form these sort of, well, we believe that these sort of technologies are coming in the future. And so that's what these lines represent. But what we're ultimately trying to do is to take that sort of ultimate imagination and collective imagination of what that future experience might look like and bring it back to a more realistic, like potential future, and start to sort of paint a picture of what are those motivators for an influence. So in our music example, it would be things like, okay, I wanted music to happen based on a search that was my mood or a feeling. That might include like me wanting to listen and discover new music, or it might be me wanting to reminisce on an old classic. So those sort of themes start to allow us to think, okay, well, if this is where a collective imagination is going in the future, even though we don't have that technology, then how can we start to build products now that can be an interpretation of those sort of future waves? Music is, it's sort of easy. We can also apply this to more, I guess, deeper problems, deeper future potential scenarios. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because the example I just gave them is like us being optimistic and going into the future, seeing a future opportunity that we could capitalize on, or we could build and we could all be heroes. It's interesting when you start to look at a future scenario, say climate change and apply this back and go, okay, what are the influences that are currently surrounding climate change awareness? And are there any influences or areas that we could actually, any motivators that we could actually create new influences? So, for climate change, for instance, we've got one trend which is amazing entertainment technology that is just getting more and more intense. Where we look at any sort of up-to-date current 3D gaming experience. We're just about to see augmented reality glasses. And so you look at that trend and you go, well, imagine if we can give people an experience that so they could actually really sort of experience what a future, I guess, stimulation might look like with climate change. It might look like me having a pair of augmented reality glasses and seeing what the sea level looks like when it's flooded halfway through my house. In such a real and intense experience, and it's so lifelike, that even though the human species is fairly reactive in nature, it makes enough impact for me to make proactive change. We need to, so that's a sort of example. We need to be able to make these sort of examples, if you like, to be able to change the majority of the collective consciousness to ultimately make future changes. Everybody's been talking about dinosaurs today and our friend Clive, so I figured, shit, I better put that in. So I'll leave you with a quote from Jurassic Park. It goes something like this. We were so busy thinking about what we could do that we didn't take the time to think about what we should do. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Ben.